today. All right, so we're joined from Austin, Texas by friends of the class, founders of Black and Brown Make Green podcast, Damian and Natasha Carillo. We're just so glad to have them today. And we've been listening to your podcast and looking at your website, and we'll definitely share that information with the rest of the school district. We are recording this for our friends at Madison Central High School, Ridgeland High School, Germantown High School, and I got a room full here with me at Velma Jackson, and also for our YouTube channel. So thank you guys so much again for taking some time for us today.
Thank you so much for having us. Today, we want to talk a little bit about closing the gap. So when I was in high school, I was on the track team and I ran the 200-meter dash. And the 200-meter dash is when you run half the distance around the track. So you have the curve and then you have the straightaway. And whenever you line up for the 200-meter dash, you line up in a staggered formation. And so if you're in lane 1, you're going to look like you're farther behind than everybody else in lane 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. And some people don't like to be in those inside lanes, lanes 1 or 2. But I loved being in the inside lanes because I could see the gap that existed between me and everybody else. And so whenever that gun went off, I knew I had 100 meters to try to catch up and close the gap. And that's what we want to share today. We have been existing in lane 1 or 2 as Black and Brown people for a very long time. And there's a gap that exists between us and everybody else when it comes to the money that we make, the money that we keep. And so how do we close that gap?
And you may think that education would close that gap. When I was the age of most of the students that are in there, I wanted to be a software developer, and I made it a point to become the best software developer that I could be. My parents supported me. They pushed me to apply to colleges. They guided me into a good college. I went to the University of Texas, and they had a good computer science program. So I thought that I was set. I thought that I was on track, and I thought that I was doing well to make it in my life. And it turned out that education was not the most important thing for me. There's something else that exists.
Yeah, and I had that same experience when I also went to the University of Texas at Austin, and I thought I was there to get my education because that's what my parents taught me. You go to school, you get a good education, you get a good job, and that's it. And so I didn't really focus on making connections or making friends. I was really focused on going to school, going to classes, and making sure that I got good grades in school. But that's not the main thing that helps us to close the gap. And then when Damian and I got married and it was time for us to buy a house, we wanted to find the best neighborhood. We wanted to find the best schools for our kids, the ones that had activities and the ones that were highly rated, because we thought the neighborhood you live in, the school that you live in, that's what's going to close the gap. But that's not the most important thing that helps you close the gap.
You might also ask yourself, does your family help you? I had both of my parents around when I was younger. And they were always very supportive, and they pushed me to exceed and excel and basically be the best that I could be. They helped me pay for college. They've been there for me throughout my whole life, and I couldn't ask for anything more from them. Everything has been great. And you might ask yourself, does a solid foundation like that prepare you to close that gap?
And I come from a 2-parent household as well. And both my mom and dad were in the household. My dad worked and my mom stayed at home, and she was there to get us off the bus at the end of the day. She was there to make sure we did our homework. So as soon as we got off the bus, we would go to the table, get a snack, and get our homework done. And so you would think that your family structure might be something that helps you close the gap. But what we found is that those are not the things that are most important when it comes to closing the gap. So if it's not education, if it's not your neighborhood, if it's not your family makeup, or how do you close the gap? The most important thing that we found and that research shows is that it's the relationships you build is what helps you close the gap. And there's a professor out of Harvard named Raj Chetty, and he focuses primarily on trying to figure out how do we help lower income individuals close the gap economically? How do we help them to make more income, to build more wealth? And one of his most recent studies shows that it's having those cross-class relationships. And so when I'm talking about cross-class relationships, it's connecting with people who are in those higher income levels. So if you're in the lower income level, how can you connect with people who are in middle income or in an upper income or who are in that wealthy level? And having those relationships, that is what's going to help us to close the gap.
Yeah, I have a story of when I was about y'all's age, the age of the students, my dad would constantly tell me to learn how to play golf. And he said that golf will put you in a position to talk to people that can help you out in your life. And he was right. 20 years after he was telling me this, 20 years after he was harping on this, and I didn't effectively, I didn't agree with him, but it became useful because 20 years later, I was at a work event, and it turns out that the event was to play golf. And our CEO, he was the one that wanted to play golf, and he was very good at it. And I could at least hang. I didn't beat him. I wasn't that good, but I could at least not embarrass myself. And after that first time, he asked me out to play golf, another time, and then another time, and then another time. And, I'd always go and play around the golf, and then we'd go back into the clubhouse, and I'd go and listen to what the people in that clubhouse, these are like wealthier, upper middle class individuals. I'd go and listen to what they're talking about. And they're talking about investing. And that's like one instance. I've got another one of some really significant story where a relationship has been the biggest boon of my life. And that's in a friend that I had at one job. Let me rewind. My first job out of college, I got a certain salary. It was probably around $50,000. I jumped ship about a year later, and after that year, I got like a $2,000 raise, and I was like, "Oh wow, I'm set. That's great." And then I got another raise after that, after I jumped to another job, and then I jumped to another job, and I met somebody, and we really clicked. He was a good friend, and we established a really tight relationship. He ended up leaving the company, and about two months later, he invited me to come interview with the company that he went to. And this was monumental for me personally, and it was monumental for our family in general. And I'm not talking about just me and Natasha, I'm talking about us and our kids, because that moved us up that ladder. We went from, middle class to, upper middle class and beyond, because we leverage our tools. And this was the way that we moved up.
Yeah, it was simply that relationship he had with that former coworker that recommended him for the job that really helped us to start increasing our income and getting to those next levels. And I know when I graduated in 2008, that was when the economy was tanking, people were getting laid off, people were not getting jobs. And I was looking for a teaching job. I went to school to be a teacher, and I had a really good relationship with my mentor teacher. And so towards the end of that year, I let her know that I was looking for a job. And she said, I know a principal in North Austin, and she's looking for teachers to add to her roster. And so she connected me with that principal. I got an interview, and all I had to do was show up ready and prepared for the interview in order to land the job. And I was able to do that, but I wouldn't have had that opportunity if I didn't have that relationship with my mentor teacher. And so how do we start closing the gap? How do we start building those relationships like this in order to close the gap? One of the ways is to seek out a mentor. And I'll tell you another story of what's happening right now in my life. I decided to become a financial coach and to start this financial coaching business. As I was starting to create my business, I was reaching out to people who were already doing what I wanted to do. And there was one person, a certified financial planner, that I reached out to named Angela Moore. And she and her business partner, Ariel Minakozi, they were already doing financial coaching. They had transitioned to doing financial coaching. And so I had a conversation with her just to learn from her. I was like, I want to know, what are some of the things that helped you become successful? What have you done to get to where you are today? And through that conversation, I connected with her on such a level that she wanted to bring me on as a third business partner in her business. And if I hadn't reached out to her, that opportunity would have never presented itself. And so these relationships, reaching out to people to get a mentor, they are things that can change your life. And Mr. Paget, you have so many connections for these young people to get in contact with. Like it can be so easy for them to get in contact with the right person if they just let you know. Like if they want to be a software engineer, Damian can talk to them and point them in the right direction. And a lot of other people that you have on, there's so many that you can connect them with. So one of the things we would encourage you to do is to seek out a mentor.
And another one is so Natasha told you about her story, and along that journey, there's a lot of doubt and there's a lot of fear that existed with the path, because like her intent was to do it herself. She said, I'm going to go become a financial coach. And we were all in, like our nights and weekends became, how do we strategically put you in a place to be able to do that yourself? And then we started talking, like, why should you do it all by yourself? Why can't you just find somebody who's already there, who's already doing it, and you can help contribute? You could use your best skills, you can leverage their best skills, and together, the combination is stronger. So that's one of the things, she kind of left out, because it's it's a little tough to talk about when you're scared. It's a little tough to talk about fear and doubt. And we all experience it, right? But you have to push through that. You'll short circuit the path to success by just pushing through that.
Yeah, and I know you mentioned on your latest episode about how you were an introvert.
Oh yeah.
And you talked about and y'all made the comment about, you show me who your friends are, you can show me who you are. But that's something that's been echoed. We've had a lot of these guests from other universities and other industries, and what they've said is the education is important, having the knowledge is important, but getting involved in these professional organizations, the networking you met with professors, with internships, because, for example, the guest we had from Austin earlier today said in the marketing field, they have some really high paying jobs, but she said they're not as much worried about they are the credentials of the degree. They're looking at the experience they've gained and the connections they've made.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's a totally different story than what we got growing up and what we believed for so long. And it took us a longer time to learn this. So if they can understand this right now, like once they go to college, or even right now when they're in high school, you can start making those connections. You can look for people in your community, in your church, in your recreational activities, and start making those connections.
Yeah, when I went to college, I thought that I'd go to college, and the way that I'd go and find new people to meet and make friends with, I looked for everybody that looked like me. I was like, oh, you look safe. You look like somebody that, I could talk to. You look like someone from back home. And it turned out, when I left college, my best friends looked nothing like me. And they were from, different racial backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds. They were from different classes. And those are the friends that I still have to this day. So it's really important to capitalize on the people that are around you, and to see somebody that is doing something that you find interesting, or that you want to be in that position already, and go and talk to them, go and make friends with them and see how they do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also important to know, even if you don't, University of Texas at Austin is one of the finest institutions in the world. But even if you're not going to the big fancy college, hold on. Sorry, I got buzzed by the office. But even if you're not going to a big fancy college, even doing the community college route, or going to the small university, or even the trade school, and Mississippi actually does a great job with their community college program, and I know Texas does as well. But using that, because even in those professional organizations is what's going to get you the work experience. Because you hear all the time, you see these job listings and they pay really good, but others says it wants related experience. You're not going to get that related experience by just going to class saying, yeah, I'm here to work hard and get my grades. There is a huge part of building income and building wealth that depends on networking and building your circle. Because, I've read a lot of research about entrepreneurs. Very, very few of them got there without some type of network around them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I will say this one thing. A lot of times we think we need to get the people at the very top that we see in the spotlight. Like, oh, I need to connect with Jay-Z or Kendrick Lamar or all these big name people. But there are people who are in your school, in your church, in your community, who have the means to provide you with the knowledge and advice you need to start moving up the income ladders. So you don't need to seek out people who have a spotlight on them. There are people who don't have a spotlight on them, who have just as much knowledge that they can share.
Yeah, and one thing, and these kids get so mad at me, they think I'm being mean about it, when I make them give these presentations, and we spend a lot of time on resumes, cover letter. We spent a week on interview skills, and I don't grade it hard, but I think it's important for them to get up and speak to a small group of people, because if you want that good job, you got to be able to present yourself. You got to be able to sell yourself. You have to show that you're a better candidate than somebody else. You have to be able to speak on why you got those connections and why that experience makes you the most qualified person to get that awesome job and to close the gap, as you say.
Yes.
Yeah, Natasha asked me yesterday, Have you ever given a presentation like in front of your class or, for your job? And as a software developer, I'm just, I'm a professional typist, right? And a thinker. So, I don't get a lot of, you would think that I don't get a lot of, time presenting. But I told her, in college, I had 2 presentations that I can remember. One of them was, in the computer science industry, in the computer science field, and then another was for an elective, which was called Mexican American Studies. And for both of them, I was just so scared. I was so fearful to get in front of the class and present. It was a handful of people. It must have been 50 people. And I told her, I never wanted to feel that way again. I didn't like presenting. And now I think it's funny that, that we do a podcast together, because that, I mean, that's kind of along the same lines. And you're totally right. You do need to present yourself, and you do need to talk about your skills, your passions, the things that you're good at, the things that you want to be good at. And it's just so important to be able to present yourself and present yourself clearly.
Yeah, you can't just go knock on the door and say, "Here, I'm here, hire me."
Exactly. Yeah.
It'd be great if it could work like that, because we do have great manufacturing and trade jobs and tech jobs here in the Middle Mississippi area, but they aren't just going to come find you. You have to put in the work yourself. Now, one thing, and like I said, we listened to a couple of you guys' episodes, and one thing that you guys really talk about a lot is the mental game of money, because you hear, and we're big Anthony O'Neill fans in here, and he talks a lot about that. And you guys really, and I think the term you used was abundance mindset, which was really, really cool, because it meant a lot to me, because we watched a clip in here about Steve Harvey, and he said, "I was broke, I changed my mindset, and everything changed." Mm-hmm. So, yeah. And so talk a little bit about where that comes from and why that's so important, because you guys talk about it so much, but it's almost become like a prerequisite to build wealth.
It really is, because your mind is so powerful. The thoughts that you think, that's what you're attracting into your life. So if you're thinking from this mindset of scarcity, which is where a lot of us work from, if you come from a lower income background, then you don't think you can go beyond where you are. You don't have a vision for doing something higher. And so you have to shift your mind to this abundance mindset and start thinking of what are the possibilities, and start creating a vision to reach those possibilities. And that it goes back to the connection part too. Like when you are around people who are doing this, you can see, oh, these are options that are available to me as well. And so you have to get that into your mind that no, it's not just for that person who has it already. It's not just for the rich people. Like this is something that you have access to as well. And so the abundance mindset is a huge thing for me and for us right now, of just like thinking big and thinking about what could we do, and then putting in the action steps behind it to make it happen.
Yes, I think Natasha, it's become her new thing, and we talk about it a lot, and then we try to tell others about it, because it is really powerful. But it's really giving you a word, it's giving you a language to talk about, basically a framework, a mental model that you build up to treat things from a positive manner, and to extract value from the universe, from the world, from everybody around you, and to present yourself in a way that makes you worthy. And because you have all these interesting skills, you have all these interesting things to talk about and to give back. And as an example, when I was telling you about the golf story, if I had never, if I had treated it like something that, oh, I know that I'm not that great at golf, I have nothing to provide to my CEO. I would have lost that connection, and I would have never considered investing in my life. Like I would have done it way later, and I would have missed out at a pivotal moment where I had a lot to grow that by. So.
Now, because I got so many good ones, I do want to get to some of these questions from the kids, and some of these are incredible. This first one is from Robert Branson. He's a sophomore, and he asked, "Is it better to pay back debts or to save money first?"
So it's important to have a good savings, because if an emergency comes up, then you're just going to go into more debt. So before you start paying off debt, it's important to have something saved, so that if something does happen, you have a little bit to fall back on. And then once you have that little bit of an emergency fund, then you can start paying off that debt. And that's what I would recommend. You can also do it at the same time. Save a portion of your money and send a portion of it to your debt. And then you always want to pay the minimums, obviously. But if you're trying to pay off more than the minimums, then you can still send a portion to savings and then send a portion to paying off the debt.
Yeah, and I think it all depends on your personal situation. It is a case by case thing. I've seen multiple arguments on it, but definitely having at least something saved all the time is vital, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is kind of interesting. This is Jeremy Clerk. He's a senior, and he asked, "Is it difficult working with your spouse?"
Yes.
We used to have life so easy. And then we started getting into all these arguments about about everything. Our approaches are different. You could tell by the way that we speak. You could tell, like the way that our thought processes are different. Our processes to work are different. And in order to do it in harmony, we have to kind of come to the intersection of our two. Like if you think of a Venn diagram, right? The two circles when they cross, the intersection is that part in the middle. So like we have to work from that space. And not only do we have to work from that space, but we have to grow that bigger because we're doing more significant things over time, and we have to problem solve together. We have to use empathy to understand the other's point of view. It's a tricky balancing act, right? Because I want things and I want to see us doing certain things with the work that we do. And then I also have to respect Natasha's, her will and her desire as well.
Yeah, and it's almost like you had to be two different people, because obviously you have the characters you built for your podcast, but then your own everyday people in your family life. So it's got to be a balancing act there. This is Tatiana Jackson. She's a sophomore, and she asked, this is mainly for Natasha. She asked, "What made you stop teaching and get into full-time financial education?"
I stopped teaching because I became a stay-at-home parent. And so I was a stay-at-home mom for 7 years. And honestly, I've always been interested in finances. And when I was a teacher, I actually started training as a financial advisor. But the financial advising role that I was training for was more of an insurance salesman. So for me, moving into the financial education helps me to do two things that I love. I still get to teach, but then I also get to pour into this topic that people really need help in, and I get to have a bigger impact, I think, than even before.
Yeah, I agree. But yeah, I mean, and even if you weren't doing this full time, it's always good to have extra skills if you're a teacher. Believe me, I know. This is James Jackson. He's a senior. And this is a great question. I talk about this a lot. He asked, was it difficult building your brand, knowing that there is a stigma in the Black and brown community of financial education?
You asked us about working together. We have arguments about this still to this day. I have a brother. He's a year older than me, and we meet, frequently every month or so. He's like, "Why do you use that label? You're anchoring yourself into one certain segment of the population." And for us, it was kind of a joke. Natasha's old nickname used to be Black amongst her family, right? And that's how it started. She's like, Black and brown. Obviously, I'm the analog of that. And our goal is to help you make green. So like she had this revelation one day, and then I don't know what came first, the podcast idea or the name.
It all kind of came at once, but building the brand around Black and brown make green. Say the question one more time, because I want to make sure I answer it fully.
He asked, was it difficult building the brand knowing that there's a stigma in the Black and brown community in financial education?
So I wouldn't necessarily say it was difficult for that. I think people can see the title Black and brown make green. And honestly, like Damian was saying earlier, that is really defining who we are, not necessarily just the people that we're trying to reach. Because I'm the Black, he's the brown. The goal is to make green, to help you make green. And you can be Black, you can be brown, or you can be beyond. And when people read that title, they can take it as they want. And we feel like the people who resonate with you, they're going to resonate with you. And so we show up in the way that makes the most sense for us, in the way that we feel comfortable presenting ourselves as a brand. And then we kind of try not to worry about what everyone else thinks about the Black and the brown community or whatnot.
Yeah, because your guests are from all communities. It's not like you've only had minority guests, because I know you had one recently. You had a white financial guy, and he was great too. So, yeah, I think that's important to know that, and I can attest, because I'm a listener, that your content can apply to anyone. It's not finance stuff in the United States is not keyed into one group. This is Jada Green. She is sophomore. And she asked, what is the purpose of having a money mindset?
So everyone has a money mindset. Everyone has a way they think about money. And some of the ways you might think about money is, we don't have enough money. We'll never have enough money. We can't afford that. One of the things that I always say, which is really bad, is I say, what was it? I just lost my train of thought. What does Isaiah say? My son always says it. He's like, oh, we've got food at home. We can't afford to eat out today. And I'm like, well, it's not that we can't afford to eat out. So I need to like reframe my language. So your money mindset really determines how much money you'll be able to tap into. If you have a mindset that you'll never be able to save, then guess what? You're never going to be able to save. If you have a mindset that you're never going to reach the income levels that you want to reach, you're never going to, because you have to start thinking, okay, well, this is where I want to be with my money. So what kind of mindset do I need to have to get there? Oh, I need to be someone who saves some of my money, because right now I'm spending it all. So mindset is everything. It's the one hump that keeps one of the humps that keeps us from closing that income gap, because you can make the money. There's a lot of people in America making lots of money, but half of them still can't afford $1,000 emergency.
Because they spend it.
So if you have the mindset that you're just going to spend everything, that mindset, it's everything.
Yeah. So whether or not you think there's a purpose behind having one, even the lack of one, that's your mindset, right? If you want to spend all your money as soon as you make it, that's still a mindset. Like, that's still the thing that you have. But the thing is that you have the power to change, and you have the power to direct it towards something more positive and more beneficial for you in your life.
Yeah, and I'm glad you said that too, because we had a guest Wednesday from Dallas. He runs Beyond Financial Reset. Her and her husband are African immigrants, and they were preyed on by credit card companies, even though they had amazing jobs. And they said the exact same thing. They said, you can make a lot of money, but that doesn't mean you have a lot of money, because they were $273,000 in credit card debt because they were not properly educated in how that worked. So it's, like we said, like we had the question about the stigma of this financial education, the Black and brown community, saying it's dumb, it's stupid, it's boring, it's not going to apply to me. You can make a lot of money, but if you don't know how to handle it, that's where you start running into your obstacles.
Yes.
This is Keisha Daltrey, and she's a sophomore, and she asked, when you're writing your podcast, how do you come up with ideas that you speak on?
A lot of it is personal experiences. So things that we're learning and applying in our life, we take it to the podcast. I mean, recently we had the person you talked about, Thomas Kopelman. He was our financial planner, and we talked about the process that we worked on with him. So that was life experiences. Yeah.
Also, we read a lot of news, and people know that we do this podcast, so they send us a lot of articles. What do you think about this? What's your opinion on this? And sometimes that adds, that's kindling to the, we take those conversations to the dinner table, and we just start talking, and sometimes that turns into a topic that we build around.
Yeah, I mean, obviously there'd be a lot of topical stuff, and there's with everything going on in the world, there's always going to be something financial, and then with the way technology changes as well, there could be a new software or a new app coming out, because back in our day there was no budgeting app. Now they got stuff that'll do it for free. So all that stuff are tools that young people can use that they'd be able to use better than we could. Now, this is Rodarius Williams. He's a senior, and he asked, what would be the best things to invest a big lump sum of money in right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
That is a good question. And I think it depends on your situation. Like, do you need education? Do you need education to help you move to the next level? Then maybe that's where your investment goes. Do you want to invest in real estate for your personal property for yourself? Then maybe that's where some of that money could go. Or do you already own property and you want to get investment properties? The money could go there. Or there's the stock market. Maybe you don't have anything invested in a retirement account. If you have a job and you can contribute to a retirement account, some of that money might go there, or it might go to a brokerage account. I mean, the possibilities are really endless. It really just depends on your situation and what your goals are.
There's the term personal finance, and this is the personal part of it, right? Like the beginning, because you have to determine what skills you have, what your interests are, who that can help you, turn that into something bigger. For example, we had a lump of money that we came across, and we decided, oh, we're just going to invest it in mutual funds. that might not be right for everybody. And we can't sit here and say that's the thing you should do, because it's not. You need to determine for yourself. And the way that you can know what those options are, build your friend group, build your relationship group, ask a mentor. It's the same thing that we were just talking about. And then you have options, you have ideas that you can make that decision from your personal viewpoint.
Yeah, and I think that's another good point. And they get so sick of me talking about this, but it's so true. Even if you're 18 years old, if you have a job that they're contributing to the retirement account with you, you are absolutely out of your mind if you don't put the maximum that they will match.
Yes.
I mean, I know that you're 18, 19 years old, you're not thinking about it, but you talk about you want to retire at this age or this age. If you don't start putting money in it as soon as you're able to work, that number is going to get higher and higher.
Yeah, that'll be the difference between retiring at 40 and retiring at 60.
Well, I will
that's
retire
as simple
at
as
40,
it is, right?
but still, at the end of the day, I'm always going to. I will always put the maximum that will be matched, because that's money I don't have to pay. So little things
Exactly.
like that, and again, it's not that they're dumb; just people aren't told about that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
if a job's offering you that, you need to take it. You're not going to miss that money in your paycheck. Believe me, you will be grateful for it later. Now, I just got one more from the questions, and this is so funny. This is Modesty Carmichael, and she's a ninth grader, and she loved the jingle on your podcast. And she asked, did you make your own theme song?
I wish I could. I wish that was me singing that beautiful tune. It's not. It's a recording artist named Kamau. We could send you the link later to share with your class. He's really talented. He's really gifted. So
yeah, that's one of our favorite musical artists. He does concerts all the time. His name is Kamau. You can find him on Instagram, Facebook, all the places.
Wow. Well,
it's like Kamau, I think.
2 U's.
2 U's. Kamau.
Telling you, as soon as I played that first episode, her eyes lit up and she was so excited, because I got to ask her where they got that theme song from. But we're almost out of time. And as always, we thank you guys so much for joining us. Just so much great information. But before we go, first of all, tell us where to find blackandbrown.com or blackandbrownmakegreen.com.
That's exactly where you find it. blackandbrownmakegreen.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook. We also have a podcast where you can listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, pretty much wherever you can find the podcast.
Yeah, and before we go, and I asked you this last time, but I have a different group with me, is that you guys are minorities in Texas here in the southern United States, but you guys have stayed financially on top of things. You stay financially literate. You are staying ahead of the game when it comes to money, because as well as anybody else in the Hispanic and Black communities that hasn't always been the case. The education hasn't always been there. So how important is it that they may think this is dumb, they may think this is boring, it's never going to apply to me? How important is it now for especially our young Hispanic and Black kids to pay attention to this, to save themselves headache and frustration years down the line?
I would say it's the most important decision you'll ever make. It's the most important information that you'll ever need in your life. Whether or not you have one job, Natasha's a career changer. And the constant between her two careers is that she still needs to manage her money. Like this is a universal idea. It's a universal problem, and you need to solve for it in your life, one way or the other. So you should learn as much as you can about it and find all the different things that you can, and always keep learning, because it's always changing as well.
Yeah. And I would say at this age, you're in the prime time to make those connections and to start putting in investments right now that can affect you when you're 40. Like you said, you can't retire at 40, but they still have the option to retire at 40. And to pay attention right now, that's what's going to give them the option, if they want to be able to retire at 40.
Yeah, and we have multiple interests of college, workforce, trade, university, the military. So obviously it's finding the right path, but being smart in that path with your finances. So again, the money mindset, like you guys said, is really where it starts. But again, thank you guys so much. Natasha and Damian Carillo, Austin, Texas, Black and Brown Make Green. Great podcast, great website, great friends. I got to get to Austin and hang out with you guys at some point. You're just so much fun. But we really appreciate it. Thanks again for joining us. I'll talk to you guys soon.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you.